Hello, it's Dr. Shawn DuBravac. We're live from CES in CES land. It is day 2 here, and I am joined by Deloitte's very own Duncan Stewart and Bill Briggs. Bill, welcome to CES.
Thanks, Shawn.
What are some of your big observations on day 2?
It's good to be back with you guys. I always love being here. CES is such a great microcosm of all the tech change that we're seeing happen in the world, right? 4,000 companies, 150,000 participants across industries across the world. 2.5 million square feet of exhibit space,
That's
I think.
right.
Does that sound right? So the feeling of there's so much tech advance going on in so many different areas, and it can feel overwhelming. What I love is, like, Deloitte puts out our tech trends, our TMT predictions every year to try to help make sense of all of this into the things you really need to care about. And I know consumer is a history, but CES is about enterprise and government. And so seeing those advances play out, and it plays directly into the theme of this year's Tech Trends report, which was AI everywhere.
Yeah.
Shocking no one, I bet. But the story was nuanced. It's twofold. One is, of course, is the headline. Every client conversation that we have, it's front and center, making sense of what does it mean, how do we apply it, what do we do? But the piece that hasn't played out here, because that's very much in play. Every booth has AI as a billboard feature, right? What we're saying is we need to get to a place soon where it's part of the fabric and the feature, but it isn't the emphasis anymore, right? No one's touting electrons and electricity on the floor as a part of their product. So we're not quite there yet, but the Trends Report's trying to say we need to get there soon. But by the way, AI is fueling all kinds of advances in so many different areas, which is the other thing that certainly we're seeing.
Yeah, things you would add, Duncan.
It actually follows on. So I'm going to get weird on you. I mean, even by our standards, Shawn, this one's going to throw you. A long time ago, there was a book called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. One of the funniest things ever. And in that first book, there's a thing called the Sirius Cybernetics Corporation. And the marketing department of the Sirius Cybernetics Corporation comes up and it brands a robot as your plastic pal who's fun to be with. What I'm seeing, especially in the central hall, is what I'm gonna try coining this. It's not gonna catch on, I'm warning you now. Friend washing. They're talking about attachment AI, affectionate AI. They are, and I mean, some of it's the whole Skynet thing, but I think a lot of it, and this comes out of our consumer survey that we did, there is a significant trust problem out there. In general, the population, 30-40% are uncertain about it, and I'm seeing this attempt by the vendors. So stage 1 is we've got AI. Yeah. Stage 3 is we stop talking about AI. Yeah. We're in stage 2. Don't fear the AI Reaper.
Embrace the. I didn't think Marvin the robot from Hitchhiker's Guide was going to come into the play.
There we go.
I'm happy about it. I'm here.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I think, though, they're really trying to deliver real solutions, practical AI, if you will, and to your point, Bill, like get to something that's meaningful. Yeah. And because some of that hits new areas, they do have to always be worried about, are people going to be fearful of the solution? Because this is a new way, especially as we move into the predictions of personalization and customization, how well we know the customer, the end user, are we going to let that all be visible to them? And are they going to be uneasy about it?
Yeah, and I think that piece of it, bounded practical use cases, is the thing we've seen tipping point when we talk about enterprise and government, is investing in tech and AI. And we're seeing it here manifest in, these are the things we couldn't do before, and we're trying to find a way to make that a compelling, quick pitch. So we'll see where that goes. The other thing I love is one of the trends chapters this year was about hardware is eating the world. And it's a play on Andreessen 15 years ago. Yeah. For a while, infrastructure and hardware became something that for a lot of our clients, they just didn't think very much about. It was a commodity. We went to cloud. We don't have to worry about it anymore. Well, that's back front and center from AI hardware announcements, enterprise and for personal devices. You see the rise of physical robotics and infrastructure that's needed to do things on the edge. And so that's exciting because, again, the tech is interesting and we could geek out about the specs and performance of all the individual chipsets and devices, but the fact that we're allowing brand new solutions to be deployed at the heart of business, where business is occurring or where mission is being served, if it's a government agency.
Yeah.
And that's very much on display here.
Definitely, and it's meeting the customer where they're at, if it's a customer experience, and it's capturing new data, new information, and new environments, and then deploying it in those same environments. And I think that's also a unique thing because there was so much focus for so many years on moving everything to the cloud. And now you see that push at let's keep it at the edge and let's deliver that in near real time.
Yeah, and let's be clear. The cloud still is a very important part of every roadmap and strategy.
Yeah.
On the other end of it, we have quantum, which hasn't been as much of an emphasis here, but it's one of the trends we're talking about, where that's not replacing traditional computing, but it's a new club in our bag. I'm a golfer, right? It's a new club in our bag that allow us to do different problems that we traditionally couldn't solve very well and unlock brand new problem sets where you can unlock physics instead of math. And math's been the backbone of computer science from the beginning. So that trend line is part of this hardware's eating the world. And we're in a really exciting point in that.
We had some talk yesterday about stock market stuff and talking about the 10 biggest companies in the world. I just want to double down on the hardware. Literally 10 years ago, you could go be a company and, walk into a venture capitalist and they'd go, hi, I'm a software company. I'm a software as a service company. I'm a cloud company. Yeah. Here, let me throw money at you. How much do you want? Any valuation? And then you'd show up and you'd say, well, hi, we're a chip company. And they'd say, the door's that way. Yeah. And that has gone topsy-turvy. One of the things you mentioned was the robotics. And one of the keynotes we had day before yesterday, Monday, was talking about the idea of physical AI.
Yeah.
And where this came up, and I was having a conversation with our US semiconductor leader, where do we need all of the chips in 27 and 28? Why are we building all these data centers? Why do we need all this processing capacity? And if it's just analyzing text, which is really low bit rate kind of stuff, we're going to run out of text real soon if we haven't already. But when we start talking about the real world, 3D visual video, that's maybe what drives the next leg of hardware, and that's your robots.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And then spatial computing is another one of the trends that we highlight. And essentially, a few years ago when you said spatial computing, if people understood what it was, they went immediately to the immersive experience, which is a piece of it.
Yes.
So AR, XR, VR. But the more exciting piece right now is the industrial applications, this physical understanding of the natural world, being able to then create solutions that allow us to model before we build, use that same model in the production line to have autonomy and automation. And so this idea that it's moving from a very passive and a very restrictive use cases to much more open-ended. But the models to allow us to understand and manipulate the physical world are the pieces that have been missing. And we're closing that gap.
Yeah, and you see it on the show floor in terms of digital twins, companies highlighting fleet management and fleet tracking. So as we sensorize these environments, as we connect these environments, then we can manage these environments better. And so picking up where our assets are, you're seeing that really across the show floor.
Yeah, and this idea of remote operation of autonomous vehicles. We were talking before, kind of highlights of the show floor. Caterpillar, the remote CAT command that allows you to actually drive an excavator that's in Arizona in real time from the floor here in Vegas. I was on a call. They didn't let me do that, probably rightfully so. But that shows you how 3 or 4 different technologies come together, which for us, for Deloitte, that's always the answer. The recipe is the collection of the individual tech ingredients. It's allowing us new flavors and new dishes we never could imagine before. But if you ever make one piece the hero of the story, the only piece of the story, you almost always fall short.
Yeah.
And
to me, there's this optimism because of that combination that we're seeing, that we're bringing multiple pieces together and we're delivering these entirely new solutions. So you give one example, but I think there's lots of those on the show floor where you're revealing new use case scenarios that you hadn't envisioned, partly because it's pulling together new technologies in new ways and deploying them in entirely different ways. We were talking beforehand about using technology to fabricate the taste of salt,
right,
or some other sensory environment. And so to see technology step in these entirely new ways is pretty exciting. I think that there's that optimistic tone here at CES because of that.
Yeah, I think it's maybe a lazy read. People think about innovation, and you think of the lab coat and the eureka moment and light bulb of invention, true invention, which is important. But oftentimes it's the import-export of ideas between and across what they're envisioned for that unlocks new potential value. And that's the reason we're seeing more tech executives and business executives at CES is to help inspire new ambition of how could we potentially take things that were built for retail and bring them into the industrial sector. And that is the honestly, it's the responsibility of leaders today, because tech is strategy, and we can't be content with just what we've always done, how we've always done it.
Yeah, and I think if you come to CES and you're in a certain sector and you're only looking at technology that you think is positioned for that sector, you're treating CES the wrong way. You should come as a retail executive or as a CIO in a retail company looking at what's happening in automotive. Look what's happening in the home. Look what's happening in some of these other sectors to understand where are some of the potential serendipitous moments that could drive our industry forward.
Yeah.
There's a lot of buyers here. I was walking into Central Hall and I got tackled by two guys I know from Vancouver, BC, from an electronics retailer, and they are looking at all the health gear and all the hot new devices as the buyers of, not the users of. What can I put in my store that will drive foot traffic and people will buy? One thing that did shock me this year, for the first time in I think a solid decade of CES, I went to an AR series of displays and I did not hate the devices. Now, I mean, it's Duncan. This is a remarkable endorsement from me, but they are comfortable, decent looking, 40 grams. I'm never buying one. You'd have to, chain me down to wear one of these, but they're not at the, this is stupid and goofy and nobody will ever want these. It's now at the, there's a market for this. Yeah. And especially in some of those industrial applications.
Yeah, and not just a market, but a real application to it, right? I mean, a real use case scenario. So it isn't just that the technology is viable, but the use case is viable. And I think that's an important shift.
Yeah, and the thing maybe to bring it back to where we started, one of the things I'm really proud of, the work that we do at Deloitte, and Tech Trends has always had an emphasis on what are the grounding forces of investment that you also have to do as you're trying to harness the shiny objects and the new things that come. And sure, there's more known on the advancing technology than it feels, which is part of the grounding, gives you confidence to invest. But there's also advances happening in the way the IT department is organized and executing, what we have to do with our core systems to make them ready to participate. We want to talk about agentic AI. If you don't have transactions and APIs underneath for the agents to do anything with, it's pretty empty. And then the idea of cyber, security, privacy, regulatory compliance, ethics, morality. My panel yesterday morning had a CIO of one of the biggest auto companies in the world. It was almost a hallelujah because we're putting that in the spotlight along with the great advances in spatial computing and AI and the like, because these all have to come together for scale. It's very easy to do a proof of concept and a pilot, novel technology, put it in play, get some people to look at it and applaud. To have it actually drive business value, market sentiment, transformation, you need that other investment. This isn't eat your vegetables if you want to have your dessert. It's those, you have to treat those also as key parts of the technology strategy.
100%, because if we're going to learn about ethics and morality, you got to come to Vegas.
What are some of the other conversations that you think are taking place here this year at CES that are different than perhaps in the past? I think when I look at it, it really is about how do we deliver a different experience? It isn't just what the technology can do, whether it's a software layer or hardware layer, but it's how do we really transform how we're interacting with that end user.
Yeah, I think that the experience is right. And when we usually say digital experience, the bias is to go just to customer. And that's true. And we've seen that in big keynotes and small booths. But that idea that front and back office, that line doesn't exist anymore. They have to be treated as continuations of. And this idea of IT, which traditionally had a back office sentiment, and OT, which is the industrial operation, the manufacturing floor, the hospital floor, and then product tech. The tech we're embedding in our product, the digital services that we're bringing to market, either adjunct to physical or those have come together. And that conversation is more front and center than I've ever heard it before here. And I think that's encouraging because that is the future. Tech doesn't know boundaries. The same AI solutions we need should go across the board. So that's really encouraging to me, actually.
Sustainability is a different conversation this year. I was here last year. I was here the year before. Everything was green, a lot of sustainability, a lot of focus. It's still there. If you are going through this washing machine uses less power, this electric vehicle, that's all still happening. But if I had to power rank them, force rank them, what was one of always the top three messages, and this is a bit ironic given what's going on literally in Los Angeles today with the winds and the dryness and the fires. But I would say this show is a less sustainable conversation compared to last year and the year before. Is that a data point or is it a trend? We'll find out.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at CES with respect to sustainability, certainly in the home you see a greater focus on energy management and really moving that data to the forefront, which I think is slightly different than in the past. In the past, some of that energy management maybe was happening in the background and the end user wasn't aware of what was happening. Now they're becoming a bigger part of that conversation. And then just the change in drivetrain to continue towards EV, hydrogen, some of these other more sustainable options, not just happening in the vehicles that we ride in, but in all of the vehicles that show up within an operation. So whether it's heavy duty trucks or industrial applications, whether it's delivery robots, whether it's robots that might be part of your labor force in the future inside of the manufacturing facility, focusing on not just broad sustainable goals, but also helping corporations start to move more closely to the goals many of them have set for 2035 or 2050 and helping them achieve those.
Yeah, a colleague yesterday told me a quote. I haven't fact checked it yet, but I think it's a great headline of 70% of the electricity generated in the human body fuels the brain. And if you have the trend line from all the AI announcements and capabilities from here, in a year or two, we already know energy and the grid and just generation is something that's very much on top of mind of government and business execs. So it'll be really telling how that manifests here in a year or two as we see entrepreneurs and inventors coming up with new solutions to help close that gap because it's real.
Yeah, and if you look at some of the agriculture examples that we see here at CES, it is about reducing the herbicides, the pesticides that you're using. The numbers they're touting are 60 to 70% reduction in what they're using today. To me, what's most interesting is when you reduce that amount, the cost goes down. So a farmer that might have used a very base chemical because it was expensive can now start to look at, maybe I use something more expensive because now I'm not using as much.
Right.
And so maybe we start to see different decisions made throughout the supply chain of every industry. And I think that's pretty exciting.
I love it.
Bill, some of the other big highlights that you're taking away from CES?
Yeah, just excitement on, as a tech leader, we have the opportunity to change the world. And you see it here. You know, the translation into what do we do and how do we start is the thing that's part of almost every dialogue and every boardroom I'm in. So my favorite quote is timely because it's Saturday Night Live. It's the 50th anniversary this year. Lorne Michaels, the producer of Saturday Night Live, has got a great quote. We don't go on because we're ready. We go on because it's 11:30, right? So how do we force some urgency in the investment of all the things that we know we need to do if we want to be able to envision and realize this glorious future that could transform industry and business models and the like. Yeah. But we have to get started. And the trap is we're waiting for the next thing to come because there's always going to be a next thing to come. Yeah. And that I just flatly reject that idea. So
yeah, I think one of the things that I'm seeing, and we've kind of alluded to it, is that there is technological change and then there is social change. Yeah. And so that is happening not just at the consumer layer, but to your point, it's happening within every organization. And that to me is a conversation that is more pronounced at CES, where we're looking at how do we bring our workforce along? How do we bring our board along? I'm seeing more companies bring their boards to CES and help them understand where technology is going so that they can also start to lead that social change.
Yeah, and maybe what might feel like a not obvious subtext of this technology conference is the emphasis on humanity throughout. And that's just a comment like, hey, what does this mean for our workforce and the skills that we need? Absolutely important. More important is AI, garbage in, garbage out, genius in, genius squared. And then how do we make sure people understand enough about what we could be doing to help us have the clarity and vision to go do it? But that importance of the human, not just in the loop, but helping be the shaman of what we need to do. And then obviously there needs to be the Sherpa to make sure we can do it. Yeah. and that's the piece that you just have to continue to underline, even amongst the tech. We carbon-based life forms still matter a lot in the equation. I think that's encouraging.
So tech leaders leaving CES, going back to their individual corporations, what are some of the things that they should be thinking about? What are some of the things that they should be considering, maybe even implementing in the coming months?
Yeah, we feature in Tech Trends Report, something we've used now for a decade plus. Our macro tech forces is a way to actually take all of the different headlines and plot them in things that are more enduring. And my encouragement, and what we do with a lot of our clients, is make that your own. It doesn't mean use ours. Have something like that. And it's almost like an antidote for the headlines and the hype cycle and hand-waving rhetoric. To be able to come back to your organization with, here's our understanding of all the tech that matters. And we're not just going to do second-grade soccer and chase the ball because something new came along. Like, you need to own that dialogue. And then that's not just, like, no board would say, oh, risk, that's that person's responsibility.
Yeah.
Oh, the financials, that's the, like, technology is the strategy and the agenda. And so how do you help bring the board, the rest of the C-suite, the lines of business leaders, your people along the journey to feel like they have ownership in not just the vision, but the execution of it. So that's the, if we can do that, oh my gosh.
Cuts across to all facets of the organization. Duncan, where do you see some of the conversation going as tech leaders leave CES, some of the things they should be thinking about?
I'm gonna spin your question. What should they be thinking about? As you know, I travel around CES with a bunch of jeweler screwdrivers, and I open up most of the boxes, until they catch me and they make me stop. Inside every single box in here are a bunch of chips made with advanced node technologies that the US is attempting to restrict other companies from using. Inside those same boxes are a bunch of chips from the countries that we are currently applying export restrictions to. If the trade war and tariffs and restrictions and materials and gallium, if all of this stuff goes sideways, every single box on this floor doesn't work. Everybody remembers 2020, 21, semiconductor shortage, supply chain. Hardware is eating the world.
Yeah.
We are vulnerable. We are heading right now, following the trends, to a period of escalating semiconductor and technology tensions. And if that goes bad, waiting 9 months for a new car is going to look like a picnic compared to what might happen in the next decade.
Yeah, I think that kind of ties into some of my thoughts. I think leaders really need to tie the short term to the long term. They need to be looking not just at what are we going to be doing this year, this month, this quarter, but they need to be thinking about how does that tie in to 5 years ahead. And as technology becomes more pronounced in all of our experiences, I think that's a more important decision. You see it in automotive, where in the past they might be worried about pennies here, pennies there, but now they have to put technology in there that they're going to have to update over the air 5 years from now, maybe 10 years, maybe even 15 years from now. So how do we think about that? How do we build technology? How do we build a car where we can easily go in and upgrade not just the software, but also maybe the hardware? Are we designing this technology in a way that makes it easy to have it be still relevant in the time horizon that it can last? And so really tying the short term to the long term, thinking about long-term strategy, and then pulling that forward in the decisions that they're making today.
As an engineer and an architect, you just made my heart sing. So I love it.
Well, that's great. Well, Bill, thanks for joining us. Duncan, always good to be with you here at CES. We're day 2. We'll be back tomorrow for day 3 of CES. Join us right here, same place, same time.